Welcome to the Cup of Joe Show, where we explore the journey of recovery from alcohol and drug addiction. One story, one conversation, and one step at a time. I'm your host, Joe, creating a safe space for honest discussions about the challenges and triumphs of addiction and alcoholism. In each episode, we'll hear inspiring stories and uncover tools that make healing possible. Sobriety is not a one-size-fits-all journey, and you don't have to face it alone. Recovery is possible, and it's worth it. Thank you for joining the Cup of Joe Show. Now let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Cup of Joe Show. Today I am very excited to welcome my good friend, Marvin S. to the Cup of Joe Show. Marvin has been sober since September 23rd, 2002, marking over 22 years of recovery. He's a dedicated member of the Friday night group. He's also the recently retired manager of the Park 40 Club here in Knoxville, where he made a lasting impact on the recovery community. Marvin has been happily married to Judy for 18 years and is a proud bonus dad to Richard, Bill, and Patrick. His family continues to grow with his grandchild Bodie and great-grandchild Truett. At home, he shares life with two cats, Violet and Blue. Of course, Blue is completely obsessed with Old Marvelous, which is our nickname for him. A man of many talents, Marvin is a great musician, a skilled builder, and a master craftsman. Whether it's carpentry, cabinets, or countertops, he's got it covered. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, relax, and let's talk to Marvin S. Marvin, how are you doing today?
Just fine, Joe.
Good. Well, thank you for being a part of the show. I'm really excited to talk to you. So what was it like growing up being Marvin?
Well, I'll tell you, I was born in Chattanooga, and I lived in East Ridge through 6th grade. And I just like a normal childhood, it was all fun and games, and I don't recall anything bad happening to me up to that point. My real father was killed in the Korean War when I was only 3 years old. And when I graduated from high school, I decided I was going to go to college at Tennessee Tech. And so they had a mandatory ROTC program, and I didn't cotton to that too well. I had in mind some other things that were less rigid, less controlled by others, and I wanted to spread my wings and fly. And with that kind of an attitude, I did not go to my ROTC classes, mandatory. And so then I got on my way to Fort Campbell, Kentucky for basic training. After that, I went to Fort Polk, Louisiana for advanced individual training. And it, of course, was training to go to Vietnam. And I went to Vietnam, and that's when all the reality started hitting me squarely between the eyes. Now, there's probably not a person out there listening to this who hasn't seen a good Vietnam War flick and is quite familiar with the experience that I and a whole bunch of other people had over there. And it's not exactly, although some people look at it as a exotic vacation. Yeah, the environment was exotic, but the rest was definitely no vacation. And so I got pretty messed up, like most people that went there. I came back with a bad case of PTSD, and they didn't even have that name for it back then. You used to call it shell shock and all that sort of stuff. But so I had a pretty good one going. I was messed up pretty bad, and I was drinking all the time and smoking dope and and just trying to run away from it all because the memories I had. And and the condition I was in, I just wanted to get away from it. And so that's just the way it was. And I didn't understand what was going on, but I tried to get myself back into society. And so I just lived on my own. I lived with my parents for, I don't know, about a year. They took me in, helped me get straightened out a little bit. Then I got a job and I went out on my own, and I was doing carpentry work and just general labor stuff at first. And I was always smoking. I'm not talking about cigarettes either.
Right.
And I was on my way to getting pretty deep into everything that way. And meanwhile, my brother, who actually came to Vietnam he was stationed in Germany, and he was an officer in the Army. And he knew that if he went to Vietnam, he would, number one, he would not go to the field to see action because he was in an ordnance battalion. And he knew that if he came over there, whenever he showed up, that I would have the option to leave the country because our father was killed in Korea. And it worked out, and I had 8.5 months out in the field, and he showed up, and they gave me an option. You can either stay here in a secure base camp, or you can go to Korea, and of course that's where my father was killed, and that'll last a year. So I did the numbers, 3.5 months versus a year, and I stayed right there in Vietnam in a secure base camp. And it was a heavy party situation. All the guys were trying to escape from reality. And so that got me thoroughly addicted to all kinds of stuff and partying all 24 hours a day. And then I came back to the States and lived with my parents and tried to act halfway normal, which was difficult as I remember it. But anyway, my brother finally he had gotten married to a German girl because he was stationed there in Germany. And she worked for the Army as a secretary. And they both came to the States together, and they bought a little house on Raccoon Valley Road, and the house was about 1 block off of Norris Freeway. And so I'd been living in a trailer for about 14 months, and they invited me to come and live with them. They had an extra bedroom. And so versus a trailer that didn't have good insulation, yeah, that sounded pretty good. So I went and lived with them. And I guess there started to be a whole bunch of years where I was just doing a job. I was working so that I could just get by and afford to buy marijuana and all this other stuff I was doing, alcohol, and just like there was no tomorrow. And it was a strange, surrealistic existence. That's all I can say about it. Well, not too much time went by. My brother and my sister-in-law got divorced, and I'd gotten to know her pretty well by that time. And one day, I kept thinking that they were going to get back together and all that, but he came to me one day and he said that the reconciliation was an impossibility for them. It just was not going to happen. He said, now, if I wanted to pursue a relationship with her, he gave me his permission. He said, it's not going to bother me. It's okay. If that's the way things are, that's the way they are. And so I didn't initiate it, but she did, and we started having a relationship, and about a year later, we got married. And she got a job working at UT in the Department of Germanic Languages, while I soon got a job at UT in the main campus cabinet shop. So that was a breaking point for me because I began to learn a trade, and I found something I love to do. A lot of people float through life and they never are happy with what they do for a living. That was not me. I was very fortunate. And so I did that for about 5 years.
Time? And Marvin, was your drinking still escalating?
Still drinking. I was smoking. It was still escalating, and it wasn't every day at that point, but I was doing something. I was smoking marijuana. I was doing something, and I was also substituting with the work. I loved the work. I was learning how to build cabinets and playing around with wood and equipment and big toys and all that, and it was a lot of fun. And after about 5 years, someone told me, you could probably do better if you went away from here and tried to work for somebody else. You'd make more money elsewhere. So that's what I did. I listened to that, and there have been times when I've regretted that, but I did listen to that, and I went out on my own, and I became a subcontractor, trimming houses, doing all kinds. I graduated through the carpentry phases, which always included some kind of countertop product. And eventually, I met the right people at the right time, and my business grew. And eventually, I was having to get out of cabinet making. At that point, I had about 12 employees. And I got out of that, and I went on to create a countertop company, moved to downtown Knoxville in the old Knoxville Glove Company building, sat right on the river there across from the university. And I started fabricating countertops there. And then eventually it brought me around to where I was doing quartz and granite. And I had 3 locations for my business. One up in Kingsport, and a manager to operate that for me. And I had two places here in Knoxville. They were not far from each other. One for solid surface materials and the other one for quartz and granite. And I had to set all that up myself. I had to put in water lines and buy the building, and all this stuff sounds grand until you realize just how much debt I had with the bank. Because every time I bought a piece of equipment or did anything major, trucks, we had to have trucks and big pieces of equipment and all that. And so I had all kinds of loans out with the bank. And my debt situation was not pretty. And so anyway, it was kind of like that until the thing that happened that changed my whole life was I got drunk on a Saturday night, and I went down to get some cigarettes at a local market. And as soon as I walked in the door, the guy working there, he knew I was drunk, so he made a phone call, and it wasn't 2 minutes later, I guess, that the paddy wagon showed up and handcuffed me behind my back, threw me in it, and I passed out right there. And when I woke up, I was in Maloneyville jail. And when I woke up, it was getting pretty late. I don't know what time it was. So I think it was about 11. Part of my processing was to get on the screen and have a little visit with a night court judge. And I had to plead guilty to this public intoxication thing. And then I stayed there 2 days, and they let me out on a Monday. Well, there I was getting out of jail, and I had to go over to the place where my car was impounded and pay a fine of $150. So I got my car back and all that, and then I went back home from there. And when I got back home, my voice recorder on my phone showed that I had 6 phone calls. And my parents was one of those. And everybody was looking for me. Oh, they thought I'd been run over or killed or something. They didn't know. So I called a few people, and they showed up and came over, and then we started talking about my drinking. And I told them, I said, well, it looks like I've got a drinking problem. And that's the first time in my life I ever said that. And once I said that, then they started advising me about making some phone calls, getting some help. And I called the hotline, the National AA hotline, and talked to a guy in New York City. And he said, he told me some things. He told me about Cornerstone of Recovery. He said, that's one of the top places in the country. He said, and that's right there where you live, Knoxville. I said, if I were you, I'd try to make some phone calls and see if you can get in there. So I said, okay. I didn't know what to do anyway. He called me every morning for about 6 days and asked me if I'd had a drink that day. And my answer the first day was yes. And my answer on the second day was no. I drunk it all up. That's all I had. He said, don't buy any more. Just try to keep that in mind, that you have something to look forward to that can help you. If you can make it from this day until you can have an interview and maybe get in this place, you'll be fine. So that's what I did. I didn't drink. He called me. I stayed connected with him that way. And then I had a Sunday appointment to try to interview to get in the Cornerstone, and I did. I got in there, and I stayed in a 12-week program, I believe it was, yeah, where I could go to work and run my company in the daytime, and I'd show up at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and go through their night courses. And I lived in an apartment building with a bunch of railroad guys, and it was all structured. It was the first time I had any real structure or accountability in a very long time. And I started to understand things pretty quickly, like 3 or 4 weeks into that I was doing the right thing, and maybe I might just be okay after all, because it wasn't just me anymore. I was amongst friends, and we were speaking the language of the heart that I could understand, and they could help me to understand where I came from and what I did and why I did it and how messed up I really was. And that was just good.
Was there anything like
So that's
unexpected?
how it was.
Was there anything unexpected, like some challenges while you were there that maybe you weren't prepared for?
Anything unexpected? I guess the introduction, part of their classes, there was a guy who was teaching a spirituality class and including meditation. And I'd never done that before. Mm-hmm. And he mentioned a book that really interested me. And so I let him know I was interested. He said, well, I've got a bunch of them in the trunk of my car, and I'll sell you one if you like. And I said, yeah, let me buy one. And the book that he sold me was Cosmic Consciousness.
Huh.
And I bought the book, and I started reading it. And it took me into a thought pattern about things I'd never, ever considered before. And it was beyond anything that I'd ever experienced in my life. And I became immediately fascinated with it. And then I read a little bit of it every day for a long time until I got it read all the way through. And by the time that happened, I was about ready to get out of that place. But it was like the things we talk about sometimes that we call spiritual by nature were beginning to make a lot of sense to me. That's kind of what was missing in my life and in my personality, that I just really didn't have a good sense of all that stuff that you can't see it, you can't taste it, but it's real. And it was a part of me that I never experienced or knew, but I soon learned that everybody has a little bit of that sort of thing in them. And I needed to pursue that and learn more and more as time went on. And there were other things, of course, that I became interested in that are along those lines, but that's what got me started. So, I'll never forget how important that one thing that happened there in that one class, and me making an attempt to meditate in that class, and how that felt, and how I knew that my show was all about the outside world. I didn't know about Marvin on the inside, and I was beginning to learn about that. So when I got out of there, went back home, and of course, they introduced me to AA while I was there at Cornerstone. They do that with everybody. And so almost immediately, I don't know, a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks, I had gone to a meeting over at Park 40 Club. And I started to go to meetings there regularly. And I met my first sponsor, Mike Kay, a very, very important person in my life. And even among all the friends I have today in AA, he's a very important person in their lives also. And he was just a very, very special person. But, I started taking interest in those meetings and go regularly and make friends and all that. And I was very introverted when all this happened to me. And I was starting to come out of myself and, be open and friendly with people and do those things that are called service, like giving people rides to meetings and all that. And it was very enlightening, how I felt after being, people would suggest that I do certain things and I would do them. And just how I felt about it afterwards just really surprised me. It was something missing in my life that I should have been doing all along. It should have been that way.
Yeah.
But so that was a long time ago when I got started in AA, 22 years plus. And then because of the Park 40 Club, and the next big thing that happened to me was here I am sober now, and I'm trying to live life and handle what life presents to me. And I don't think anybody would say that's an easy thing, because nobody gets through life without a bunch of difficult things happening and trying to figure out what you're going to do in response to those things. So I was at a Park 40 Club going to meetings and still had my company when the big recession of 2008 and 9 came along. And 80% of my business was with Lowe's and Home Depot. 80%. When that recession hit, they didn't sell a single countertop job from January until June, when I had to close my business. Not a single one. So 80% of what my overhead was still there. Still had all the employees. We had to gradually start laying off people, And at the end of that, I closed my business June the 12th, and it was 2009. And at that point, I was about ready to go and get myself a bankruptcy attorney and try to put it in the hands of a bankruptcy court. And I had a very good accountant that was doing all my bookkeeping stuff over the years. And he said, "Not so fast, Marvin. You've got quite a few assets that I believe you got a very good chance of doing what's called a workout. And I'll help you get a real estate agent. I'll help you get a bankruptcy attorney. And I'll be part of that too. And we'll help you, walk you through all that." Well, 2 years later, sure enough, this attorney, he was a godsend. And the way he handled me, was I was going to liquidate my assets little by little because I knew the industry and I knew the people who were interested in buying my building, my equipment, my materials, everything. And the bank was agreeable. And so I would sell stuff, give the money over to my attorney. He would pass it on to the bank's attorney. And that's how I got through that. And after 2 years, I was fortunate enough that one day a miracle happened and I was able to sell my last asset and get the bank to be agreeable to write me a clean slate on all the debt that I had. And I was given a new lease on life right there. That was 2011. And when that happened, coincidentally, the guy that was managing the Park 40 Club, who's still a dear friend of mine today, he had just finished up a run of about 5 years of running the club, and I was on the board at that time. And so I decided to take that opening and become the manager of the Park 40 Club. So I had to step off the board to do that, but that's what I decided to do. And I can't believe I stayed there 12 years altogether managing the club.
Well,
But I did. That was the best thing I ever did because
for
I
people
began to grow.
for people listening at home, Marvin,
spiritually.
Sorry, Marvin, but I was just thinking for people listening at home who may not know what the Park 40 Club is, can you tell them what it is?
Oh, Park 40 Club it's an institution that was created back in 1980 by some West Knoxville businessmen who were AA members. I think there was about 5 or 6 of them altogether. And they decided that a lot of the meetings that they were going to when they went to and from work were just plain inconvenient to get to. So they found this place. It's in the Park 40 Plaza across from Cracker Barrel, right off of Parkside Drive. Not Parkside, I'm sorry. Park West Boulevard. And I don't think it was located there in the beginning, but they didn't stay elsewhere very long before they decided to move there. But that's how it started, was these 5 or 6 guys that wanted a convenient place to have meetings as they went to and fro from work. And I don't know a whole lot more. A lot happened there before I ever showed up, but that's what it is. It's a clubhouse. It's a nonprofit organization created solely for the purpose of having a place for AA meetings to meet. And at first there was only one meeting there, and pretty soon there were 3. And now the club has meetings at least 5 a day, 7 days a week. And
That's a
they
lot of
also
recovery.
have some annual events like Thanksgiving buffet, Christmas buffet, and they do an anniversary celebration in August every year. And I think now they're at 45 years. Yeah, 45 years is how old they are now.
Yeah, that's pretty remarkable. And a lot of people have recovered there. At least got the, I for one, I was a big part of my early sobriety for sure. So I'm very grateful for the Park 40 Club and Marvelous, of course. So what
the one thing I remember the most about my experience there. Yeah.
Oh no, go ahead, Marvin. Go ahead.
I was going to say the one thing that I really, was very unique was how I went through the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, because we had to shut the club down for 2 months, but I still continued to work, and the staff was on furlough. And when we reopened, I had to reposition everything. And, the chairs had to be 6 feet apart. And we had cleaning procedures that were very laborious and tedious that we had to engage in. So I didn't want to ruin my clothes with the Clorox we were using. So I went around wearing a hazmat uniform, looked like the Michelin man. And people have some photos. Anyway, so that's how I went up to that point. And so I recently retired from the Park 40 Club. September the 3rd was the day I decided to retire, where I had exactly 12 years of service there. It served me as well as I served it, that's for sure.
Yeah, you
So,
had a big
I
impact,
didn't talk a
Marvin.
lot about along. Well, there's the other side of everything too. There's the people I still have them, all my friends. And there's a few people that I was fortunate enough to be able to sponsor along the way. They're still around too, a lot of them. And the 2 previous managers are still my friends, still kicking and alive. I talked to one of them just yesterday. And I just had I was very fortunate to have an opportunity, first of all, to get sober to begin with. That's the most difficult thing in my mind for anybody to come to the conclusion that they need help and they don't understand what they do and why they do it. And there's people that can help us understand that, and that there's a different way to live. And that way is, in most cases, is extremely spiritual. Each person has their own freedom to choose how they see that, how they pursue that, how they educate themselves about that. But we're all in this together and trying to help each other to, first of all, stay sober. Secondly, grow spiritually so that we're strong enough whenever life throws stuff at us, we'll be able to handle it and we'll know what to do.
So what are some of the best things sobriety has brought to your life, Marvin?
Well, I would say that the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is, if you read the big book, it clearly states that the fellowship is a perfectly good substitute for alcohol. And I find that to be eminently so. So, the fact that I have a substance, I really wasn't living before. I mean, it was like walking around like a zombie, drinking all the time and staying intentionally away from other people, isolating. That's not life. Because the fellowship is a whole bunch of people trying to get to know each other and help each other and creating social events so we can all engage together in creating and enjoying things and each other and all that. I mean, I was never like that before. So sobriety brought me an ability to have an interest in other people and find out what they're like and how their life compares to my life, I guess. So it just opens all kinds of doors in a spiritual sense.
Well,
I think I'm like everybody. I'd be dead without.
Yeah. Well, me too, Marvin. And you are I call you my spiritual guru. And something I always think about when I think of you is that you introduced me to the Golden Key, which has really been life changing for me. Emmett Fox wrote the Golden Key, but What are some of the things like tools like that that you can share that you use for maybe somebody out there listening?
Okay. When it comes to the golden key, uh, once I started reading Cosmic Consciousness that I mentioned before, I started realizing there are a lot of people that can write some books that are very enlightening. And I could never write that kind of stuff myself because I don't have that lifelong experience that they have to write stuff like that. They understand the spiritual side of life when they write. And if I read what they write, I can get some kind of understanding for myself and understand how things work. And I used to think I knew everything about everything when I was drinking, but that's just an illusion. I figured out pretty quick that if I stick with reading the right kind of material from the right kind of people, then I can begin to understand a lot of things I never could before. The golden key is basically, and there are other things floating around in AA that are very much like the golden key. But the premise is if you have a problem or a difficulty, and that's what most of us do, we get stuck on trying to figure out how we're going to handle that by ourselves. We look at it as something we brought upon ourselves somehow. We had a hand in it, whatever it is. And so we need to figure it out and make sure that we don't do anything worse than this thing we created. And we go about trying to figure out what we're going to do about it, a game plan. I mean, the golden key suggests that rather than trying to think about the problem itself, turn to God and think of God and only God. Forget the problem. It's not a problem. It's not even there. Just push it to the side and forget it altogether and focus on God. Now, God has all the power and all that. And there's ways of talking about God, but if you do all that instead of thinking about the problem, it will disappear. I have tested this principle and it works just like it is suggested. And I can give you several different examples. I won't go into it right now. It's kind of highly detailed. But the golden key is this: we all tend to focus on the problems that we make for ourselves or that come our way. Sometimes it's not our fault. And we're just trying to control instead of turning to the master of all control. And so if I say to myself that God created the universe, whatever God is, of course he can solve my problem. Of course he can, as long as I don't think too much about my problem. Because if I think too much about it, it's going to get bigger. That's the way it works. If you focus your mind on something negative, it will get worse and grow. If I want it to disappear, I got to not think about it. So that's just the most beautiful suggestion I've ever run across. Now, if you go around AA, there's another thing, like there's an old Indian shaman who's talking to a young Indian, and he says, I want to teach you a lesson. And the young man says, okay. And he says, every one of us has a white wolf and a black wolf, and they're doing mortal battle in our head. And one of them is going to win that battle. And the young man says, well, okay, well, which one of them's going to win? And the old shaman says, the one you feed the most. See, that's very similar to that. I've got a good friend, and I'm sure he'll hear this when I say it. And he had a sponsor who said he has this white sheet of paper. And on this white sheet of paper, right in the center of it, is this tiny little black dot. And he said, his sponsor told him, he said, your problem is that you have all that wonderful stuff surrounding that black dot, but all you focus on is that black dot. And I think a lot of us are guilty of focusing on the black dot. That's thinking about the problem instead of going outside of ourselves to get help, whether it's God, our friends, or whoever, but someone with more experience. But that's a beautiful illustration of how that works. So you can have if you'll just get away from thinking negatively. And, those are all the things I've learned because of being in recovery and coming across the right influences. And here I am. Don't need a drink today.
Not today.
Yeah.
So
what I owe my life to all of those.
Yeah. Me too, Marvin. What does a typical day look like for you? Like, take me through like a typical day, how you start your day and how you finish your day.
Well, I've got a lot of projects going on because that's the way I am. So I get up in the morning and the first thing I do every morning is read some of this material I'm talking about. And then I sit and ponder, who do I need to call today? And I'll pick out about 2 or 3 people that I haven't talked to in a while, and I'll just call them and check on them. And I stay connected, and I don't use the same people all the time either. But that keeps me grounded in thinking about somebody else. And then I have all the stuff that I'm doing, what I call projects around my home. I just finished building a big deck on the back of my house. There's all kinds of things like that I do. Mondays, I clean house with my wife, Judy. That takes about 2 hours. And I won't let her do it by herself. That would kill her. She's 80 years old. I'm 76. No. So we do, and we do not feel good unless we do it. We make our bed up together each and every morning, and it starts our day off right if we do that. It's religious. We do it every single day, and I don't let her do anything heavy that I don't help her with it. And if she wants to do something, and I'm not, if I'm doing something else myself, I'll usually give up whatever I'm doing and help her. And you know what? We get along pretty good that way because I don't disregard her. I don't disrespect her. I help her when it's needed. And that's not the way I was when I was drinking either. So I do that kind of thing. And then I'll go to a meeting. I have 3 meetings a week I go to. After all these years, I still go to 3 meetings religiously. And once in a while, I'll go to a special event that's AA related. And by the time 6 o'clock rolls around, I'm a 76-year-old tuckered out person.
That's a pretty good day. What would you say to somebody, Marvin, who feels hopeless today?
Well, I'd probably tell them I was that way myself once because I was trying to solve a problem myself that couldn't be solved by me. And I had to realize that there are people that want to help and can help, but I have to be willing to reach out and ask for that help. So that's one thing I would tell them. And I would tell them help is available all the time. There's not a time when help is not available. You just have to know how to go about reaching out to get it. And once you hook up with the right people, that means people in recovery, every time you try to get help, you'll get it. And then from that, you have to just don't get in a big hurry. These things take a long time, but they're also, you can have a lot of enjoyment along the way. And there is no destination. It's just a good journey that we all try to enjoy together. You don't want to get to the final destination too quick, because that's death. That's the final destination that we all have, and we don't want to get in a hurry to get there. Just smell the flowers and roses and laugh as hard as you can laugh with the people you meet along the way, and that's as good as it gets. That's what I tell them. You
Well,
can
that's
have a
pretty
good
good.
life, but it's not going to happen unless you make it happen.
Yeah. Well, I think that's pretty good, if you ask me. Is there anything we didn't cover that you'd like to share?
I think we about covered it.
Well, in that case, then, Marvin, it is time for our rapid fire questions. Are you ready, sir?
Well, I have to say something here.
Yeah.
I'm a Vietnam veteran. Go for it.
What is your favorite recovery slogan?
My favorite recovery slogan is, "This too shall pass."
What is your least favorite recovery slogan?
Well, I guess it's obvious the reason why I'm slow on this one is I don't have a real, negative. I like them all. They
Yeah,
all have helped me.
that's
There's
okay.
5 little ones you get at every meeting. Yeah, think.
Mhm.
All of those, they're great. I mean, they keep me thinking in the right direction.
What do you think is your sobriety superpower?
My sobriety superpower, aside from my wife, of course, uh, I think it's the fellowship, because together we can do what we cannot do alone.
Hmm. If you could say one thing to your former self, what would it be?
Get up and do something, you dumbass.
What song do you play to lift your spirits when you need a boost?
Well, this is going to sound strange, but I learned how to play this song because I like it so much. And that song is The Highwayman. The Highwayman is a song about reincarnation, the continuance of life.
I like it. If you could grant yourself one wish to help with your recovery, what would it be?
Well, I guess I'd have to say, if great wealth and ease of life was thrust upon me, I'd be ruined all over again. I just cannot handle that kind of thing.
What step do you love the most?
The first step, without it, You're not going anywhere.
Mm. What step do you love the least?
Well, I think they're all so practical, and to help an individual do what only an individual can do. With help, but the
Yeah.
individual has to do the work. But the one I like the least is probably the ninth step. The difficulty of overcoming my own fears about the future when I should just let it be what it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Do it anyway. Forget the fear and do it anyway.
Yeah. What is one of your favorite movies?
That's Dune.
All right.
Because I'm a very grandiose alcoholic, and Dune is a very grandiose movie.
I like it.
It is a great piece of sci-fi writing.
Yeah. And finally, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Well, I'd like to hear him say, I made you just the way you are. So I have to forgive just the way you are.
I like it. Well, for everyone listening, a new episode is released every Thursday at noon. You can listen to the show in your favorite podcast apps, Amazon Audio, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, and others. Just search for The Cup of Joe Show. Don't forget the. And also like, subscribe, and share because someone may need to hear this message today. Marvin, thank you so much for taking the time to share your experience, strength, and hope. You are an amazing person, my friend.
Well, I thank you for saying that, Joe, because I can't tell myself things like that because it doesn't sound very humble.
Well, I'll do it for you, buddy. Thank you all for listening.
It's just a laid-back vibe, baby.
We hope you enjoyed today's experience, strength, and hope. We are so grateful you decided to join us. Please share this episode with someone who might need it. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. Remember, no matter where you are in your recovery journey, you are not alone. Reach up and reach out to someone. Please do not suffer in silence. Until next time, let's take it 1 minute, 1 hour, and 1 day at a time. Thanks for listening to The Cup of Joe Show.